Hello, I'm Abby Field. I'm Director of Professional Development here at the IWFM. I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar as part of the Turbulent Times series. It gives me great pleasure to be introducing myself during National Apprenticeship Week. The theme of this year's National Apprenticeship Week is Build the Future, and this gives us the perfect opportunity to focus on apprenticeships as a key mechanism to addressing the skills gap in workplace and facilities management, amongst other aspects such as the policy landscape. It's no secret that the UK economy is suffering a skills shortage and our sector is acutely affected. In IWFM's 2019 Market Outlook Survey, 75%, that's 3 in 4 respondents, said their organisation have found it difficult in the prior year to recruit employees with the right skills, and they expected the problem to continue. That was before the impact of Brexit and a global pandemic, where we are now seeing an acceleration towards digital skills. Not a new need, but perhaps a more imminent one. It goes without saying that IWFM is committed and passionate about professional development in our sector. We are the professional body after all. Having developed the FM professional standards, which are widely recognised and embedded by employers in the recruitment, development and management of professionals, we want to make a career in workplace and facilities management one of choice, not of chance. IWFM has long advocated the opportunities that apprenticeships can offer. We have supported the development of the FM apprenticeship series and are pleased to be working towards delivery of the Level 6 standard. With the spotlight on apprenticeships this week, we are taking this opportunity to focus on this key topic from a number of perspectives. What is the apprenticeship experience in the UK? What's right with them? What can be improved? How can we better support all stakeholders, employer, apprentice, and those delivering the standards? Why aren't we making more of the opportunity presented by this excellent format? What can we learn from the employers taking them on, the academic institutions putting them on, and perhaps most importantly, of all the apprentices themselves? There's so much to think about here, and we won't cover it all in an hour, but with different sets of experiences and angles to compare notes and experiences and to get some solutions, we've assembled a panel to explore this topic. I'm joined by 3 guests, each of them bringing a different perspective to apprenticeships. Before we get into the discussion, I'd like each of my guests to introduce themselves to talk briefly about their role and connection to this key subject area. Peter Farrell is from the University of Bolton. Peter, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. So yes, I am an academic at the University of Bolton, and I'm here in the context that we're starting in September 21 a Level 6 facilities management apprenticeship. That will be a slightly different programme in the context that normally we would deliver on a day release basis, 30 days of learning at the university. So for this new programme, we're going to convert those 30 days into 6 block weeks. And for those 6 block weeks, we will require 2 weeks of compulsory attendance at the university where the students engage with our laboratory facilities and tutors and get the campus experience. 2 weeks we will deliver remotely, and we're all becoming more expert in the sector at that currently. And the remaining 2 weeks we will give an option of whether they are delivered and received remotely, or whether the students wish to come and get the campus experience again. We hope that will make the degree available to people across the UK, and for the 2 weeks where they are required to attend, they can travel Monday morning. We start the programme at Monday lunchtime, travel back on Friday afternoon, and have some type of overnight accommodation, whether that be in a local hotel or whether that being some student halls as residents. I hope to speak more about that programme as we go, perhaps.
Excellent, thank you, Peter. Zoe Bacon is from the Cabinet Office. Zoe, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Abby. So I'm Zoe Bacon. I'm the Property Apprenticeship Manager. I'm based in what we call the Office of Government Property, which sits within the Cabinet Office. My role and what I'm here to do today is sort of the employer's point of view. My role is twofold. So I work across government, engaging and supporting government departments to take on apprentices. And I also work with the apprentices themselves, providing support and a career framework and pushing them forward to develop a career in FM.
Thank you, Zoe. Finally, we have Carly Sandel joining us as well on the panel. Carly is an apprentice from the Ministry of Justice. So over to you, Carly.
Thanks, Abby. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Carly Sandel. I'm currently working as the Head of FM Governance and Assurance for the Ministry of Justice in their Estates Directorate. I'm currently undertaking a Level 7 MBA in Facilities Management, working with the Ministry of Justice and supported by Sheffield Hallam University as the training provider. I'm about halfway through the 3-year course. I'm just tipping past that point now.
Thank you, Carly. That's excellent. Okay, so let's get started. Let's explore, first of all, what an apprenticeship is and look at the best things about them. So just to recap, an apprenticeship can be defined as an in-work training programme for those aged 16 or over, combining hands-on paid work with a chance to learn and earn qualifications. Just to bust one common myth, anyone can become an apprentice. There is no maximum age limit for applying, so anybody in your organisation can become an apprentice. So thinking about what's the best, exploring what an apprenticeship is and look at the best things about them. Can I ask each of you to say what you see as the best thing about the apprenticeship model and where you think they could be most improved? And I'd like to start with Peter, please.
Okay, Abby, thank you. I think for us as universities, the most important thing is that it promotes our engagement with industry. So as the apprentices go through the programme, we as university tutors will meet with the apprentice and their mentor in the workplace every 3 months. So clearly there's lots of dialogue going on there. It will support us as a university in developing our curriculum, and I'd also like to think it's good for employers as well, because they will be able to see that as they engage with us on that 3-monthly basis, they will be able to influence the curriculum as well. I mean, it's clearly not good that we deliver what we think employers want. We've got to deliver what you actually want, and that engagement helps us to keep up to date as academics with all the modern initiatives that are around. So the key issue for me is better engagement between all the parties.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Zoe, would you like to comment on that? So what do you think is the best thing about the apprenticeship model, and what do you think could be most improved?
I think the best thing about the apprenticeship model for me is that mixture, that blended approach of practical and academic learning. In the civil service, we can be quite a unique beast. So, we can range from people who's working with prisons to officers to docks to military bases. So I think having that ability to have that recognised accreditation and qualification that's recognised outside of the civil service, but being able to train people whilst they're learning that general FM awareness, but also how that works within the government setup, I think is a great thing about the model for me. I think where it could be best improved, I think this has actually been driven forward by the current situation, I think sometimes the flexibility of the model. And I think actually, if there's any good points we could take out the last year, that has really come to the forefront. I think where they've been able to sort of look at how we can have different ways of providing that learning and supporting apprentices through it. And so I don't think it's something that could be improved. I think we've actually seen quite a lot of improvements over the past 12 months.
Excellent. Well, that's good. That sounds great. Thank you. And Carly, I mean, your perspective is really important. So, what do you think is the best thing about an apprenticeship? And again, how could it be most improved?
I think for me the best thing has been that I can apply what I'm learning through my study directly to my day-to-day activities, and it's enabled me to meet a lot more people in the organisation. So as I've been looking and learning about different subject areas, I've been able to talk to the relevant part of the department to learn more about that. So it's helped me further my learning and the richness of it by able to practice it in my day-to-day work, but also enabled me to reach out to other parts of the business that I wouldn't necessarily always get involved with or have daily involvement with, to learn more about what they do. And that's helped me see the bigger picture at work, and see where I fit in and how the actions that I take then reflect into other areas of the business. And I think the area that we probably need to improve, the biggest shock for me with the apprenticeship was when I first started, was the time commitment and the amount of work, because I looked at my study qualification and I looked at the actual apprenticeship level work, and I just didn't feel like I'd really grasped that before I sort of signed up for it. But actually, when you get into it and start doing it, it's not scary, because it is embedded in what you're doing every day. It's not that you have to sort of found hours and hours of time outside of your working day and give up your life to do your apprenticeship. It's part of your work. So I think probably do a little bit better around that initial startup of this is the apprenticeship and the work, but this is actually how it fits in with your day-to-day work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, it sort of makes the sort of models very meaningful to your work, doesn't it? Because you're doing it anyway. Okay, thank you very much, all three of you. Thinking about take up, then I'd now like to move onto awareness and take up. With we're going to use a quick poll. So the government has been driving apprenticeships with some vigour, providing additional funding and other incentives, most recently offering one-off payments for new apprentices. IWFM's research from 2019 found encouragingly that organisations in the facility sector see apprentices as key to the talent pipeline and part of the solution to bridging the skills gap. Our latest Outlook survey is now in the field, and I'll come back to that later. And we are asking a similar set of questions, so we look forward to seeing what the current mood is when we publish our findings later in the spring. Meanwhile, we'd like to ask you, our audience, today a couple of the same sort of questions to take a quick pulse check. We've got 4 quick-fire questions for you, and we'll show you the answers shortly. So thank you. So my organisation presently employs apprentices. So if you can click one of them, please select one of them. And then the next one, which is, thank you. It has been difficult in the last year to recruit employees with the right skills. You can select one of them. And the next one, apprenticeships. Thank you. Apprenticeships are an important part of the solution to bridging the skills gap in workplace and facilities management. And then the last one, which is, wait for it to load, which is my organisation employs people who originally joined as apprentices. And then once you've done that, we can share the results. So my organisation presently employs apprentices. We have 59% of you, of the audience, agree. So you've all got, over half of you have got apprentices, 24% haven't, and can't quite see that because my box is in the way, my presentation box. There we go, put it over that side. 17% of you not sure. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Thank you. It has been difficult in the last year to recruit employees with the right skills. Okay, so quite a lot of not sure. So that's interesting. Maybe some questions from the audience around that would be helpful. Next one. Oh, okay. Apprenticeships are an important part of the solution to bridging the gaps in workplace. This is brilliant. Excellent. That's what we like to see. We think so too. And the last one. Okay, so okay, that's really good. So that's fantastic to see that progression. And so that's exactly what we expect to see, I suppose. But Zoe, does the Cabinet Office, is there a real drive to, once an apprentice has gone through, that there's a job at the end?
Yes. So across government, we are very keen that once we've sort of invested in those apprentices and you've got those skills, that we keep them. So there is a big driver for us to retain our apprentices, and some departments. We recently did a cross-government recruitment for what was actually chartered surveyors, and we did them as permanent roles from the get-go. So people came on permanent jobs with the apprenticeship contract. So it is a drive for us to keep those people. The apprentices we have are great. They are so driven and they are so keen to develop. And what we also find is they're really keen to give back. So, once they're a year or two into their apprenticeship, people like Carly are the first ones to put their hands up and volunteer to mentor the apprentices coming behind them. So for us, it's a real investment, not just for succession planning and getting that pipeline of talent in, but for then sharing those skills and helping to build those with the new apprentices coming behind them.
Excellent, thank you. And one other question, Zoe. Could you tell us how the Cabinet Office in particular supports apprenticeships?
Right, so as my role as apprenticeship manager, I work across all government departments, and what we are there to do is to see where we can work with departments to engage with them, to look at what capability needs they've got and where apprentices can be used to meet that need. So whether it's external recruitment or whether it's actually looking at existing staff and saying this is where an apprenticeship could help build that skills and that capability. So we work with the departments on that. We also work at the departments that their support. So we look at the managers of apprentices, the mentors of apprentices. So how do we support them? And we like to put an offer together which makes sure that they're fully aware of what's expected for them. I think, as Carly said, it can be a bit of a shock to a system, what is required by an apprentice. So it's making sure that those that are supporting apprentices are well supported themselves. They know exactly what's expected of them. They know what the apprentice needs to learn, what experience they need to be exposed to, and that we can set up networks for those managers so they could share best practice and have that support amongst themselves. We also then have a support offer for the apprentices. So our big driver is a career in government. We want to keep you for a career. The apprenticeship is the first step on that career within FM. So we share with them our property career framework. We want them to see where they can go and how we can support that. So we like to do online. At the minute, everything is online, but forums where we get the apprentices together. We have subject matter experts doing technical sessions. We encourage them to do sessions themselves, sharing their experiences, building their presentation skills and their other softer skills. We expose them to a network of experienced property professionals and other apprentices and graduates so they can build that network across government. And what we're really keen to support is to sort of dispel some of those myths that apprenticeship, sometimes I think people feel a bit overwhelmed about the support an apprentice will need. I don't think what they realise is how quickly somebody like Carly becomes an asset to the team that they are in. You will very quickly, as much support as they need in their training, they very quickly start to give back. They start to add and be a real asset to where you are. So from our sort of government point of view, ours is all about supporting the departments with where apprentices can be best used, how we can support the support and training and guidance for the people who be supporting the apprentices themselves, and then how we can add and enhance their development from the Cabinet Office across government and help build those skills. Hope that answers the question okay.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. And Carly, obviously you're on the flip side of that, so it would be good to hear from your experience of what support has been given. I know obviously Zoe's on the line as well, so but yeah, if you could give us a sort of overview of what's that's been like for you as an apprentice.
Yeah, the support's actually been fantastic. It's been more than I expected, and from more angles than I expected, actually. So I've had a lot of support from my employer, as I mentioned earlier. They've been great at facilitating my learning needs and helping me reach out to other parts of the department to support my studies. I have regular one-to-ones with my manager. My director keeps a close eye on what we're doing for our apprenticeship and see if there's any opportunities they can create for us to use our learning. I've also had a lot of support through the training provider, Sheffield Hallam University. I have a work-based learning coach who meets with me regularly, and my manager, my mentor, through the apprenticeship. So between us, we monitor how I'm progressing through the apprenticeship, if there's any more support that I need, and how my studies are going and how I'm actually managing to apply what I'm learning at work, and equally how my work environment affects my apprenticeship and directs my learning. So it's been very collaborative, which is great, but I've also felt that the support I've had from my fellow apprentices has been excellent, and that was not what I expected. I've really met a great group of people that I'm studying with, and Zoe's team also, because we're both in government, they do a lot of work to kind of set up apprenticeship networks and put you in touch with other apprentices so you can learn from each other, share experiences and help each other along the way.
Thank you. That's really good. Thank you. Okay, so audience, it would be good to hear from you what you think a good employer support looks like. So if anybody's got any, sort of experiences or areas that you would like to share with us, what you think good employer support looks like, that would be really helpful. I'm going to go to Peter now, and as an academic provider, Peter, and the programme leader of what we hope will be the first degree level apprenticeship in facilities management, how do you approach apprenticeship delivery, and who do you see coming through the apprenticeship route?
Okay, well, the apprentices that enrol at the end will get an apprenticeship degree. They'll also get a BSc honours in facilities and built asset management. So we hope that that is additional motivation for them. So not to stereotype, but yes, that there may be some people joining at the young end of the spectrum, 18-year-olds, and starting the apprenticeship at the same time that they're starting with a new employer. But also we will be looking for existing employees to be coming in, mature employees. And I think in our industry we have lots of people who are really talented and perhaps working at lower levels in our profession. And if they engage with an apprenticeship and are given the opportunity to learn, that they can climb that ladder very readily. And I do see people in construction and facilities management who are at director levels and haven't got those formal qualifications. I'd like to think they wish they had them. And if we're to fill the skills gap, I think it's not just the new recruits to our profession, but it is to look at people who are lower down the ladder and use the apprenticeship as a vehicle to help them to develop their learning and become more useful in the workplace.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Okay, so that's the sort of perspective on improving take-up. Thank you. So what we're going to have a look at now is the barriers to take up, and I'm interested in what you see as the barriers to taking up apprenticeships, because some of the reasons given for not employing apprentices in our research included not having the time and resources required to employ them. And I wonder if I can ask one or two of my panel members to comment on that, and our audience in the webinar chat. Those of you who are not or don't see them in your workplaces, what are the barriers you see to take up? And Zoe, I think this would be quite a good question for you, because we know from our research that there are more apprentices in the public than in the private sector in workplace and facilities management. So as an employer in the public sector, can you give us a flavour of what your offer to apprentices is? How do you get them on board, and how do you help provide the best possible experience, and what might be the barriers for the people you're working with, the managers and as such, to bring those people on? You know, what are the usual feedback you get?
I think it's very similar to what you found in your research, Abby. I think it's people feeling that they don't have the time or the knowledge to be able to take an apprentice in and give them the required learning that they need.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work that we do around is actually finding practical ways to show how the apprenticeship can benefit what they are, and providing that support to the managers and the mentors that's going to have to work with these apprentices. The majority of managers are so committed that they don't want to sign up something unless they know they can give their 100%. And I think it's that uncertainty of what is required that can sometimes put people off, which is why we're so keen to have a manager support offer available to make sure that the managers are fully aware of what's coming in. I think sometimes it's also seeing the apprenticeship as a bit more flexible than some of your other roles. Sometimes with apprenticeships, you're not going to get every work experience they need in that one role. So it's encouraging them to have that wider look. As Carly said, you know, if you've got bits of learning experience you need, you might have to look outside the role, you might have to look outside the team. So, you know, we can sometimes come in with that. We'll say, if there's a bit of experience you need, let's look across government to where you can get that. So I think a lot of the barriers are misunderstanding or not enough information of what the apprenticeship requires, not the understanding the flexibility of how they could implement that in the workforce. And I think sometimes the fact that they think, especially for people like Carly who's on the longer apprenticeship, that's 4.5 years that I've got to train somebody. They become a very, very independent, productive member of staff very quickly into their apprenticeship. You know, you will be getting that work back. It's not somebody who is not carrying their workload for that period of time. That is not the case. So it's a little bit of misleading, I think, around that, and understanding how our roles can incorporate an apprentice and just having that flexibility to make sure they get the work experience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so one of the things I'm quite interested in is pay an issue? So the apprenticeship pay while they're doing their apprenticeship, do you see that apprentices, especially if they already work with you, you don't have to tell me obviously about your pay scale, but do you have, you know, when you bring a new apprentice in, are they on apprenticeship pay scale or are they on your pay scale?
That can depend, it can change across government. So for some government departments, the apprentices are brought in at a set level and they are paid the same as everyone else at that level. So they're brought in and they're paid at that level. Some departments do have what we call an apprenticeship pay grade. And that can be either, it depends on where the department is. It can be slightly different to the standard pay grade, but also in some departments, what they're looking at doing is they may use the apprentice pay grade as a way of introducing increments to the pay through the period of the apprenticeship, especially for the longer apprenticeships, because obviously, you know, sometimes your level 6 could be 2 or 3 years. That's a long time to be on the same pay. So I don't think it's so much of a barrier for civil service because we have quite a set pay structure, and we do have apprenticeship pays when we come in. We don't do too bad with attracting apprentices because actually I think we're quite competitive on apprenticeship pay. So from a public sector, it's a little bit more difficult to answer, I think, than if you were the private sector. Sorry if that wasn't.
No, that's perfect. It's perfect because there's sort of thing people want to know. You know, do you put them on as, you know, a separate pay scale, or do you bring them in as you would a normal employee? But they're doing an apprenticeship, you know, how does it work? And then the other thing, and I have to ask you again because it's probably not appropriate for the other two, which is around what sort of feedback do you get around impact on productivity? You know, so in terms of your managers and obviously the apprentice as well.
I think that's one of the things that sometimes helps us with is our case studies around apprentices, because I think at the start, an apprentice can be quite time resource, quite a big time resource for the manager. It's getting them embedded, it's getting them inducted. I think actually what we show is the managers are always pleasantly surprised how quickly the apprentice is up and running, and actually how much they're delivering within the team and how much work they're able to pass on to them. So although at the beginning it can be a bit more time resources to get them set up, and I think as Peter referred to, you know, a lot of apprentices can be quite young, and sometimes it's their first big job, so you have that additional sort of support to give them transition into a workplace. But actually, I think as long as we adequately support the managers, I think that's a key thing, and that we make sure they have that time to do that assessment and development conversations and to help provide the apprentice when they're there. Very quickly, the apprentice is just another employee that's delivering a great amount of work, having a great benefit, but they're learning on the side.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful because I know they're the sort of things people want to know. Okay, so looking at, let me look. So how else can employers, academics and apprentices advocate the apprenticeship route? You know, it'd be good to hear again from the audience how those of you that are running apprenticeships, how you do that. So you know how we advocating. It'd be good to hear how the university does that, Peter. What have you done to date around the new level 6 degree apprenticeship that you're about to deliver? What is the run up to delivering that, and how do you recruit onto that degree?
Okay, so we have been running the apprenticeships now for several years, particularly in the civil engineering discipline. And historically, we would have had day release students, and we have strong relationships with employers. We have industrial advisory boards, and now what we're finding is that those what were day release students and the employers were paying the fees directly. They all now are all now converting to the apprenticeship mode. So we have very few part-time students who are paying their own fees. I think that a point I would like to make is that when we've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, I think us as academics were looking at the apprenticeship agenda and thinking, wow, this is very, very difficult to understand, and it's going to be very difficult for us to change to. I could just think that employers would be sat there thinking the same, especially that the mentor managers. It's okay for perhaps practitioners who are specialising in apprenticeships, but the individual managers who need to be the mentors and act on a day-to-day basis, looking after their mentees. The apprenticeship system is not difficult, and when you get your apprentice under your wing, the universities are there to support you. And then clearly the apprenticeships are paid for through the apprenticeship levy. And my understanding is if you're not a levy payer, you are still able to attract a substantial amount of funding towards the course fees. The figure that we've been working on recently is the employer will pay just 5%, whereas historically on a part-time degree, the employer would have been paying all those fees.
Yeah, okay. And do you think weeks like National Apprenticeship Week bring a national focus to apprenticeships, and do you find it helpful?
Well, it's got to be helpful in terms of creating awareness. You know that this event today does that, and makes employers aware that there is an easy route, lower cost route for them to be able to get their workforce more highly skilled and contribute.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Carly, coming to you, what is your sort of perspective of an apprenticeship, and what do your sort of colleagues and friends say to you when you say you're doing an apprenticeship? I mean, do they sort of interrogate you, or do they know anything about it? What's your experience of that sort of wider awareness?
I would say colleagues, yes, but I think that's because we've done quite a lot of work in the MHA to raise awareness of apprenticeships and start employing more apprentices or get more existing staff onto apprenticeships. So generally people are quite impressed, they're quite understanding if, I need to take time for study, or I particularly want to work on something because it's going to support my apprenticeship, and they'll work with me. So they've been very supportive in that respect, and they understand what it's about. There's probably more we could do to raise awareness of the apprenticeship schemes and how we get people into them, and we're actually working more on that. And as a department, we've just actually this week had someone in my team sign up, which has been fantastic. So yeah, it's really good internally. And in terms of friends and family, I think my parents have got quite an old school view of what an apprenticeship is and how that works. So that's been quite interesting for them. My friends generally haven't been too aware of what's involved in it. And I mentioned that there's a degree linked to it, and they suddenly have a light bulb moment, think, oh, right, okay, that makes more sense now. So how does that work with your workplace? So if you're also studying for a degree. And so I explained that to them. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. There's some areas there's really good understanding and awareness of it, and others not so much so.
And Peter, just thank you, Carly. And Peter, just going back to you, do you think, so what role do you see the professional bodies like IWFM playing in the apprenticeship model?
Okay, so we are working with professional bodies all the time. I see the apprenticeship as a vehicle to encourage both the apprentices themselves to get into membership of IWFM, and also perhaps we might find that some of the managers or the mentors in the workplace are not yet members and may be inspired to do so. Clearly, we need to work very closely with IWFM in terms of the endpoint assessment and the academic portfolios that the apprentices need to produce. I will just make the point that one of the good things about the apprenticeships for me is that when we're setting the apprentices their assessments, as much as possible, we set them around work-based problems. So the apprentices bring problems that they have at work into an academic environment. Perhaps they can grab some data from work and apply some academic tools to that data and do some academic analysis around that data that they otherwise wouldn't have done. That they can take the outcomes from what they've done back into the workplace. And because the students are clearly they're motivated to do it for work because they want to do a good job at work, but they're additionally motivated because they're going to get a qualification out of it as well. And therefore the apprentices will go the extra mile or burn the midnight oil, as it were, in doing a better job and putting a better product on the desk of their managers when they go back to work again. And that can be for some of the smaller assessments in the individual modules, but at the end there's a big dissertation where the students, again, we encourage them to grab a problem from the workplace and do a thorough investigation into what the problem is, get some data, do some analysis, and take some solutions back to work again. And I'll just quickly say, we had an example yesterday of where a student has done a dissertation and through the knowledge that it was he gained in this work, he's gone back into his workplace and he's put together a bid for a grant for £150,000, which has been granted. And he said, I wouldn't have been able to put this bid together if I didn't acquire the knowledge that I did acquire through doing this piece of research for my university study. So it's win-win.
It's really meaningful, isn't it, when you have something that happens like that, and you know, it's really empowering. So fantastic, and that's the great thing about an apprenticeship, is that it really does bring, you know, the work and the qualification together, the learning and the experience. And that brings me nicely onto the next question, a lovely segue into academic versus technical and the role of qualifications, because there seems to be an age-old debate about the academic versus technical learning. And I'm interested in your views on the relationship between qualifications and apprenticeships, where apprenticeships are traditionally thought as an alternative to the academic route. And thinking about the enormous skills gap challenge in our sector, what do you see as the pros and cons of tying qualifications more closely to apprenticeships? And Peter, I'm going to come back to you here because of your academic perspective. and then I'll probably go to Carly and see what she thinks. So Peter, so obviously, what do you think are the pros and cons of using tying qualifications and apprenticeships together?
Well, I think I partly touched on that, but when I said that a lot of the assessments that the apprentices will do will be linked to problems that they have in the workplace. I think the reason why we're in our profession is because we all want to get the job done, and we all want to be practitioners, and we get a sense of accomplishment from getting the job done. But I don't think we, as practitioners, we should close our eyes to the academic tools that we can apply and get better solutions in that sort of way. So the integration is important. We don't want to be doing just blue sky thinking that goes off into the ether and then there's no application. So there's lots of great things that we're doing in the university to help the students be a bit wiser, a bit more astute in their decision making when there is a problem in the workplace. We don't want them to just make an anecdotal judgment and say, oh, let's go off and let's do this, and it might turn out to be wrong. Before the apprentice, and when the apprentice becomes a senior manager, they have a problem on their desk. They don't say, let's do this. They go away first, do a bit of research, and then come back with a perhaps a more measured decision than they otherwise would have done.
Excellent, thank you. And Carly, an interesting question for you. When you looked at doing an apprenticeship, and obviously your apprenticeship has a qualification built in within it, if it hadn't have given you a qualification as well, would that have changed your mind about doing the apprenticeship?
Yeah, I think for me, at the point that I was at in my career when I started the apprenticeship, if there hadn't been a qualification attached to it, I don't think I would have been as keen. Knowing what I know now that I've started and I'm actually doing the learning and working through it, I wouldn't have given the same answer. I think it's still so valuable to have that apprenticeship and the technical element and applying it to what you're doing. But I think for me, the qualification element actually makes it more attractive for people, because that's not just getting the experience and learning on the job. It's also about getting that qualification behind you and ensuring that you've got that for your career progression, because it's not always an FM that we're particularly technical. We might be desk-based a lot of the time, and it's getting those qualifications. And I think over the years we talk a lot about professionalising FM, and as part of that we're building in a lot more around qualifications and IWFM level skills. So I think for me it was really important to tie those two together, and it made the apprenticeship route more attractive for me.
Okay, that's brilliant, thank you. Okay, the sort of last question then, and it's around apprenticeships and the evolving nature of work. Finally, thinking about workplace more widely and the changes we have seen in the way we work that have been sped up by the way we have to cope in the pandemic, I wanted to explore as a final point what needs to happen to ensure that for the future, the longer term, apprenticeships take into account the revolution in skills needed for the way we are likely to work in the future. And one could argue the future is already here. There is a quiet revolution in the way we work. So how can we adapt to that? So it'd be good to hear from the audience. What trends are you starting to notice that may affect apprenticeship delivery and experience beyond this pandemic? Where do you think the apprenticeship development process might need to adapt to embed the accelerated trends of digitalisation? I knew I wouldn't be able to say that, digitalisation. What trends are you starting to notice that might affect apprenticeship delivery? Peter, is there anything that you would like to contribute to that question?
Okay, so I think as our education institutions, we meet with the employer on a 3-monthly basis, and clearly that is more easily done now as we're all coming up to speed with remote meetings. We need to get feedback from employers, and I think what we need to do in the apprenticeship arena is to make sure that we're regularly updating the curriculum, but based upon the feedback that we're given. The apprenticeship knowledge, skills and behaviours are written in fairly generic terms. So there is digitisation in there, and then as we try to drill down and deliver on that, we as universities need to make sure that we're using those tools in our delivery, in our assessment more. We need to make sure that we've got all the software on board to be able to do that. So, you know, currently we are about, for example, drones in our delivery and all the supporting software that we need to support that equipment in doing FM surveys. So I think for me, again, it's about keeping the curriculum up to date and making sure that our resources, our IT facilities are up to speed too.
Thank you, Peter. And Zoe, what are your thoughts around this, around apprenticeships and the evolving nature of work?
I think the last year, following in line with what Peter said, has driven the online and I can't say that word either, digitisation forward very quickly.
Yes, hurrah!
I think the key thing is what we found from some of our providers, how agile they've been. I think being able to react to the times and to move with them. I think there has been a big push for online learning, but I think what has come from the past 12 months for me is a fuller understanding of the best ways of using online learning. So as an example, when we have our apprentices in, we do a one-day induction. So what we've done this year is we've done 3 smaller sets of induction, because for somebody sitting in the room for 7 hours, it doesn't work. So I think it's looking at, we've got this online forums, we can have lots of access to online learning and reading material, but actually for the apprentice, sitting for hours at a screen scrolling through text doesn't work. It's how we keep that interactivity and how you build into it. I think the potential loss of that absorption of learning in the office, that just hearing what people are saying around you when you're in a remote setting. And some of the training providers I've seen have been really good at building different facilities in and different ways of keeping that while on an online forum. So I think for me, the key thing is we are moving online, we are using better use of digital, but it's using it in the right way. It's not just say we can put everything online, there we go. It's how do we keep a blended approach. I think, especially for FM, civil service as a whole, a lot of us have been working from home for the past year, but our FM apprentices, that's not the key. Some of them have been in the office most days. They're still having to go into that, and they're the front line for our workplace. You know, they're having to keep those areas safe. So it's how do we keep that blended approach where you've got on-site assessments, endpoint assessments? How do we adapt? And I think, again, that's where the professional bodies come in as well. How can they adapt and keep that agile approach? And I think, as Peter says, so that the curriculum is always changing and improving and following with what industry and employers need.
Okay, thank you. And Carly, it'd be interesting to hear how it's affected you the last year and what has gone well in terms of, you know, delivery in this sort of remote world, and what you really miss from before. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah, so I think for me, I'll touch on digitalisation as well, which I managed to get out. That was a challenge initially when the pandemic first started. I had a couple of swift moves online, the study blocks with the training provider. A couple of them were really not good at all, made it a real challenge, and it was compounded by the fact you've got lots of different apprentices all using different IT systems, trying to find one that works for everybody. But actually, training providers done a lot of work in terms of making electronic resources available to us where we can't be loaning books or going to the libraries, and improving their delivery online, looking a bit like Zoe was saying in terms of how they deliver sessions, making sure that when you're doing it remotely, it can be done in a way that gives people breaks, keeps people interested, doesn't make it sort of death by PowerPoint. So that's been good, and I've seen a real improvement throughout the year. And I think it feels like we're in a space now where the delivery is not really affected by the pandemic. The downside is that we're not necessarily able to get together as an apprenticeship group, study blocks, which has been really useful in the past. Now, I imagine a lot of people in their day-to-day work, we're not able to meet up as much as we used to, and it does make things harder. It's not quite the same not being able to see people face to face. The other thing I would say, though, that has been particularly good is that the training provider and both my employer have been very good at making sure that where things are rapidly changing in the workplace and in the industry, that they're keeping their teaching materials and study focus current. So we've had a lot of time with what we're learning this year focusing on COVID, and for each block that we're looking at, whether it might be HR or finance or FM strategy, it's how that is in BAU, if we ever get back to that, but also how it's been affected by COVID and what the new world might look like and how it might work. So they're already naturally kind of delving into keeping things really current, and it feels like the digitalization has kept up with that now as well. So we're in a much better place, but it has definitely been a year of transition. We're probably actually in a good space now where things will start easing up again.
Yeah,
we can get back to space again more.
Exactly. And Carly, what things would you like to see come back most? You know, if we were, you know, sort of its ease, you know, what if you could have, you know, one or two things that you definitely would like to have back, what would they be?
It would be around the people element, because I think that's what's missed, both at work, being able to reach out and meet people face to face, you know, bump into people in the workplace and be able to discuss things with them and have more real-time interactions. So for me, I've been working from home a lot, but on the few times I have been out, you still don't have that daily usual people in the office interaction, which has been difficult. So I've had to put more focus into having one-to-one sessions with my manager and linking up on WhatsApp with the other apprentices. And I'm also looking forward to moving back to study blocks with the training provider and actually going to the university and being in a classroom again and doing that study, because I actually find that a better way of learning, and it's easier to bounce off of people and do group activities. So it's the people side that I think we're missing, and the face-to-face learning and learning at work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all of the sort of areas that we're going to run through, but I'd like to turn to the audience and see what questions we have for our panel. So I'm looking at the questions, and we have a few here, and I'd like to read this one out to the panel because we have covered off a fair bit of the others. But it's a really good question. Do colleagues, and it's from Sarah Wicks, and do colleagues still feel apprenticeships are still mainly associated with practical trades, or is this belief shifting? And let's go to Peter, as he looks like he would like to answer that.
Well, I remember a phrase from one of our captains of industry many years ago, who said that we're not going to do anything in our profession unless we improve our image. And that was about our profession generally. And I think that there's probably still a job to be done, and it will get easier as the years pass, about improving the image of the apprenticeship. It's not a 7-year qualification where it's a trainee engineer in using an oily rag and an overcoat. It's clearly not that. It's a professional qualification. It's prestigious, and it will be. We're still relatively at the early years, and it will be, I feel, more prestigious as the years roll by, and it will become more prestigious as employers are engaged on the front line as mentors of these young apprentices, and then it will be really valued. And then when the apprentices, they do come through and they be changed from being mentees to mentors, then that's when the prestige, perhaps hopefully, will become better for the qualification, and everybody recognises them for what they are.
Thank you, Peter. And Zoe, have you got anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think Peter answered it very well.
And Carly, you earlier commented that when you went home and told your parents that you were doing an apprenticeship, their response, I mean, is that the sort of response you're getting, or is it getting better? as is it improving as you're moving through the months and years?
Yes, absolutely. I think it is getting better. I did have to explain to my parents because their initial reaction is, "Oh, how are you? Why are you doing that exactly?" And it's a bit like Peter said, it's not a 7-year program now, and it is not so technically focused, sort of hands-on on the job. So it's more applicable to the kind of roles that we're seeing in FM and the broader spectrum now. So yeah, it was quite a learning curve for me to explain to them the difference now. But actually, I think with the cohort of apprentices that I'm on now, nobody is particularly technical. It is more sort of office based, and there does seem to be a shift. And indeed, in my organisation, the apprentices that I'm in contact with, it's not quite so technically focused. It is more qualifications focused and study focused. So I think it does feel like there's definitely a shift.
Thank you. That's good to hear. All moving in the right direction. I mean, we've got some other questions here, but I feel that we may have covered them off. But one of them was about remote working and working from home. How do colleagues feel this will impact apprenticeships, especially for the younger apprentices? I mean, Zoe, do you notice that during the COVID pandemic that when you've brought on younger apprentices, do they struggle more to get themselves online and get themselves organised? I mean, is there an age articulation, or do you just find that is it difficult? Is it really easy to onboard them?
It is something that the departments are working for. I've actually found with some of our younger apprentices, so in the last sort of month we've taken a couple on, they're very adept online. I think they find sort of Zoom meetings, Teams calls very easy to manage, and they're quite comfortable with it. I think sometimes it's the more older one of us that struggle with that. But we do have concerns about making sure that they do feel that support at home. I think there's a very different way of working from home than it is studying at home. I think there's a lot more of a demand. So I think for us, it's making sure that they've got the right equipment at home, that they're taking care of their well-being, that they aren't sitting for 7 hours straight at a screen, and it's making sure they're getting that social element. Because I think especially for younger apprentices, that feeling of sitting in the office and hearing your experienced colleagues talking around the work around you is invaluable. You pick so much up that way that you don't realise. So for us, it's working with them to make sure that we're still having online forums, that we've got support groups, and actually as part of that, even if you've got a long meeting and we've had a very technical session, is at the end having almost what we call a coffee break of just how is everybody doing? How are you finding it settling in? What have you been doing recently? And I had a lovely email from one of our apprentices who's recently started with the department from transport saying, I've just got my laptop and I've been working on this and I've been reading up on about this and I've been joining these Zoom meetings and I've been working with these colleagues and these people have been contacting me, and it's been great. I think it is a challenge. I think it's something we have to work at, but actually some of our younger ones have adapted so quickly.
Yeah.
More the older ladies like myself.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm going to wrap up now, but I just would like to whip across the panel, and just ask you to give us, a sort of closing call to action. If you could say something to the DFE or Ofsted, Ofqual or Boris, what would it be? So Peter, I'll come to you first. Is there anything you'd like to close with?
I think I would say that the apprenticeship agenda is exciting. It's exciting for us as universities, and I hope it's exciting for employers and as individual mentors, assuming most of the audience here is practitioners, you will get a great deal of satisfaction through seeing your mentors progress through the mentees progress through the apprenticeship route, and I hope you will enjoy it.
Thank you. And Zoe?
To echo that, I think apprenticeships are a fantastic way. We have got some really great quality apprentices in our departments that are going to be fantastic property leaders of the future. I can see that. And I think the big plea for me is just to raise that awareness of apprenticeships in schools, you know, I don't think it's an alternative to formal education now. I think there's such a link with qualifications. I think it's a genuine route, and it's just to make you sort of, I suppose it's year 12 and 13 students aware of what's out there, so that you can show it's a very genuine, viable option.
Thank you. And importantly, Carly?
Yeah, for me, I think I would kind of build on Zoe's point in terms of raising awareness. I think apprenticeships are so valuable, and now sort of being halfway through one, they're a fantastic way for a department or business to develop your staff, and for you to get the best benefit out of your staff, and for them to contribute to your business and your productivity and your efficiency. So it's win-win all round, really. So I don't know why people wouldn't be doing it. And if the issue is awareness, then we all need to be doing that within our own departments and with our colleagues.
Absolutely. So fantastic. Thank you. I've just got a couple of slides that I'd like to run through. So don't forget IWFM's Insight Hub, where we've got lots of useful insight for you to use and read, and use part of your apprenticeship learning as well. So you can download that at the address given there. The next slide is around our market outlook survey. This is out at the moment, so please do contribute to that. It's really important, and we'll be sharing the insight from that in the spring, which won't be far away now, we hope. And then we have the COVID-19 Resource Hub as well, which obviously do feel free to go to that web address and get all you need to be able to support your business and work as well. And we've got the schools pack. I forgot that one. Thought I was doing so well. So this is an award-winning education class of your own. That they bring together tailored support and advice and guidance to help inspire young people to look at different professions right from an early age. So it's an important part of our offer as well in the schools pack. I would like to ask you to share any questions, any case studies or best practice with us. It's really important that if you tell us what you've been doing and your experiences, then we can use them in the future, or come to you and find out more. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Peter and Zoe and Carly for your time today. It's been incredible having you on the panel, and thank you for your time. We are making a recording of this, or it has been recorded, this webinar, so if it's available to anybody, and whoever wants to listen to it again, I'm sure you will, or share it with your friends. That would be fantastic. So thank you very much for your time, and that's it. Thank you.